Yes, workers' rights are under threat in the UK as we speak. We discuss that next. My name is Toby Lepatty Mesme. It's Tuesday night, the 19th of January 2021. Welcome back to MesmePolitics, bringing you all the latest in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective. On the way, a look ahead to the incoming Biden administration. See also, between now and 7:30, I want to talk to you about Rishi Sunak and corporate Britain's criticism of his support for businesses, Jeremy Corbyn in court, and, yeah, that continues, and Holyrood rejects the Spy Cops bill. However symbolic that is, that tells us a few things. We discuss what exactly they are. At the top of the hour, the Business Secretary has confirmed his department is reviewing how EU employment rights protections could be changed after Brexit, while insisting they will not be watered down. The Guardian understands a consultation on employment rights was being signed off by Kwasi Kwarteng's predecessor, Alok Sharma, who left after being given a full-time role leading preparations for the COP26 climate conference. Insiders say the consultation is ready to launch and has been circulated among select business leaders. So Kwarteng has said, I think the view was that we wanted to look at the whole range of issues relating to our EU membership and examine what we wanted to keep, if you like. A really good, high standard for workers in high employment and a high wage economy. That's what I'm focusing on. And so the idea that we're trying to whittle down standards, that's not plausible or true. So even by just following that we are way above the average European standard, and I want to maintain that, I think we can be a high wage, high employment economy and a very successful economy. That's what we should be aiming for. Your daily reminder that he was involved in Britannia Unchained, a 2012 collection of essays by Tory backbenchers calling for reduced worker protections. But he does now say we are absolutely looking at safeguarding employment rights. I know there's been stories in the newspapers that there's going to be a bonfire of rights. This could not be further from the truth. This is what the Financial Times said, saying proposals in the review cover rules about breaks at work and removing overtime pay when calculating certain holiday pay entitlements. Ed Miliband, the Shadow Business Secretary, says Kwarteng has let the cat out of the bag, going on to say a government committed to maintaining existing protections would not be reviewing whether they should be unpicked. This exposes that the government's priorities for Britain are totally wrong. Neither workers nor business want ministers to take a wrecking ball to the hard-won rights of working people and families. And this is where we are, is it? We're not in we're in an awful position. So the government is breaking all its promises to the various people it purported to represent. And, this was supposed to be a blue-collar, red Tory government, right? This was meant to be, of course, never bought this, but this is what it was meant to be. This is what it was touted as. This is how it got traditional Labour voters to vote with their social values, their social conservatism, and vote with the Tories. It is going to placate these people that are going to be absolutely shafted economically with culture wars. Don't diminish or underestimate the power of the culture war. It's going to use the culture wars to keep people voting against their best interests economically and socially. What we hear on, we're going to improve things are going to be better, this is good, it is doublespeak. It's doublespeak we've heard time and time again from the establishment. They do it time and time again, be it with marketising and selling off and basically slowly privatising the NHS, be it with removing labour rights, be it with cutting taxes on the wealthy. They initiate a form of doublespeak that frames it in a good way. That's what we're seeing here. So Kwasi Kwarteng today joined Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, and Nadeem Zahawi, plus 30 major employers to discuss the best ways to create jobs and rebuild our economy. It's my priority as Business Secretary to engage relentlessly with companies, large and small, as we build back better. That's from Kwarteng's Twitter feed. And that image there of those four sat in the room is basically going to be the image to plaster to the news headlines and articles in years and decades to come, demonstrating the government ripping up rights and standards. This symbolises, the beginning of a of conspiring between government, between Tory donors, between Tory ministers to take a bonfire, yes, take a bonfire to rights, standards and protections hard fought for in the British economy. Labour must, and they've gone in the right direction on this, Miliband especially saying the right things on this, they must be loud and they must be proud and they must fight this from now. They must cut through the noise and they must highlight this for the sellout, the double-speak encrusted sellout that it is. The initiative of the 1%, right? All trade unions in Britain must unite around opposing this to a near militant extent. This is ground zero. This is the end game. This is fighting the turf of post-Brexit Britain with a government in office, particularly with people like Kwarteng, who hold extremely anti-worker views, extremely hostile towards working class people, extremely hostile to rights, standards and protections, people that view basic protections at work as an infringement upon our liberties because apparently it's a human right to be exploited, right? These are the sort of people we're dealing with, cross-eyed libertarians, completely loony right-wingers. And these are the people who have a seat at the table. They had a seat at the table during lockdown. They have a seat at the table. Johnson was susceptible to their arguments on lockdowns. And Rishi Sunak is susceptible to these people's arguments on economics. This is not the mainstream. This is not the centre. This is not one nation Toryism spearheaded by Michael Heseltine. This is Boris Johnson's hard right, socially conservative government taking a wrecking ball to what remains of the post-war settlement. They'll come for rights, standards, protections, and then, of course, they'll come for the NHS. This is... Sorry, voice break there. We're having those quite a lot at the moment. Maybe I'm hitting puberty. No. This is one of the key reasons why we need alternative media. Alternative media, free from being beholden to corporate interests, holds these people to account. And it tells the truth. It tells you what things actually are. Whether you agree with it or not, it says the government's taking a bonfire to workers' rights, as opposed to some sort of doublespeak about efficiency or improving the performance of business or enhancing jobs. All of that's bullshit, right? All of that stuff they tell you is wrong. It's been proven wrong time and time again. Don't believe them. This could well be... these people have to be held account. They have to be held to account, and they're not going to be by the corporate media, as they weren't when they sold off chunks of the NHS. This looks like we're heading towards, looks like it could end as sort of the worst case scenario out of Brexit, where after exit, the right has complete monopoly on all the arguments. The left hasn't got a horse in the race, basically. They've been completely ostracised, which is what Starmer is enabling right now in his leadership of the Labour Party. He's not giving them a seat at the table, he's ostracising them. So you have that. You have a hard right government in office with a huge majority steering the exit in order to make it a boon for elite interests, as opposed to the radical restructuring of the democratic settlement in Britain that Brexit should be and was always meant to be. This could end as the worst case scenario that so many people talked about on the Remain side of the argument, because we are having right now a hard Tory-led, right-wing, xenophobic, otherwise corporate Brexit. That's what we're heading for right now. That's what this looks like. That's why we have to fight that terrain right now. That's why the left should always have embraced Brexit in order to win on that terrain. And it is why now the left has to completely... any discussion of anything like rejoin has to be completely quashed and thrown in the bin. Because we're going to need our wits about us. We can't indulge in liberal fantasies. We have to exist in the real world. And we have to fight to win, for progressives, the post-Brexit terrain in Britain. Whether you were a Remain or a Reform, like so many, or whether you were Lexit, like me. We have to unite around challenging and fighting for a progressive post-Brexit settlement rather than reopening the fight over Brexit itself, right? You can tinker around the edges, but we're not rejoining. We're not going in the single market. These are dreadful ideas. That's something to be opposed. So, quick listened to a report from Sky News yesterday on the cut to universal credit and families affected. Have a listen to this.
2 years ago, musician McKinley Chadwick started his career as a sound engineer. Now, after a year of pandemic, he's struggling and unsure how he will cope if the £20 a week universal credit lifeline thrown last spring is withdrawn at the end of March.
Got no money. I've got like 130 quid in the bank. It affects people like me, people like my friends and family. You know, my mum's disabled, she's on universal credit. If they cut that, that's going to be a big chunk of our food shopping that we're not going to be able to afford.
The Labour leader highlighting what losing £1,000 a year will mean for many of the 6 million people who are helped by the universal credit boost.
We're still in the middle of a pandemic and the government wants to get rid of that uplift, which is vital to those families. It's the wrong thing to do. I think many Tory MPs in their heart of heart know it's the wrong thing to do.
He succeeded in goading some of them to speak out today.
Now's not the time to consider any reduction in the uplift in universal credit. This uplift was brought in to help people through the extreme challenges of the pandemic, and those challenges haven't passed.
The uplift is so important right now, and it's why I believe it needs to be extended for the further 12 months.
The ayes to the right, 278. The noes to the left, 0.
The government managed to stop any rebel Tory MPs voting with Labour, but that doesn't mean the problem has gone away.
Fantastic.
Visiting a vaccine centre in Oxford, Boris Johnson makes clear no decisions have been taken.
What we've said is that we'll put our arms around the whole of the country throughout the pandemic. The countries we've already done, I think, £280 billion worth of support, and we'll keep all measures obviously under constant review.
The fact that Boris Johnson hasn't automatically sided with his Chancellor is striking. Rishi Sunak wants everybody to be braced for the end of emergency support that got us through the pandemic within months. But Boris Johnson can spy a row with his backbenchers he doesn't want to have. Life is about to get more difficult for the Treasury, not least because furlough ends at the end of April, meaning that just as a lot of people have got vaccines, more people are going to end up on unemployment and hence on universal credit.
It's just the little things add up.
Those like Mike, who lost his job in hospitality, moved back in with his mother and is still struggling to cope.
Yes, you know, you can live within your means. You know, it's a great little phrase, but when you're already living well within your means and still there's not enough money for the month, I don't know what to do.
Rishi Sunak is going round Whitehall telling people that whatever he pays for now has to be paid back later. But when will Boris Johnson let him do that? Sam Coates, Sky News.
We do love a little bit of austerity at the end there. But yeah, that's a report from Sky News on the whole situation. It's pretty dire. We can only suspect there will be a U-turn, but the uncertainty families across Britain are being plunged into. And indeed, if Rishi Sunak, I don't think he will, but if he does carry through this cut, people will actually, as a result of government action, thousands of people will fall into poverty. Fall into absolute poverty. That has to be fought. That is horrendous. The government has an obligation to support people in the midst of this crisis. Moving over to the States, and the Biden administration is on its way. That's right, a new presidency. The end of the Trump era, the beginning of the Biden era. Let's have a listen to a report from today on Biden's plan for the first 10 days in office.
With just 2 days until he takes office, President-elect Joe Biden is poised to inherit a country grappling with a cluster of crises. Biden now unveiling new details about the major issues he'll tackle, vowing that within the first 10 days, he'll take a series of executive actions aimed at reversing some of President Trump's most controversial policies. Among them, ending the Trump travel ban on Muslim-majority countries, rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, extending the pause on student loan payments, mandating mask wearing on federal property and interstate travel, speaking out overnight at a virtual event aimed at kicking off the inaugural week.
We know that times are tough, but because of you, we're filled with hope, and we're filled with hope for America's future.
Biden also proposing a sweeping $1.9 trillion relief package that would include an extra $1,400 in direct payments to families, billions in aid to state and local governments, and for the distribution of the COVID vaccine, promising 100 million doses of the vaccine in the first 100 days. Some GOP lawmakers are already balking at the price tag.
So $1.9 trillion is way too much. We just did $900 billion.
Further complicating Biden's agenda, the impeachment trial of President Trump, which could begin in just days. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris.
But the American people deserve that in their president and vice president coming into office, that we address the things that are weighing on them and implement a plan.
Biden has also said he will aim to unify a deeply divided nation and work with Republicans. Aides tell NBC News Biden's inaugural address will draw on themes of unity and healing.
And aides also tell me that Biden worked on his inaugural address with family and top advisors over the weekend. Meanwhile, Vice President-elect Harris will resign her Senate seat today, set to be replaced by California's Secretary of State Alex Padilla. He, along with Georgia's two newly elected Democratic senators, set to be sworn in later this week.
Right, very good. So that's a report from today over in the States. Today as in the outlet, not, it's not today. Actually, the report was from yesterday, but it's from an outlet called Today. I believe it's a show on MSNBC, but I'm not quite sure. So, looking ahead to the Biden administration and the ways it might be composed and the ways it might function, Kamala Harris is key, right? She's going to be key in a way that vice presidents have never been key. There have been very high-profile vice presidents, infamous vice presidents, popular vice presidents. Kamala Harris will not only overshadow and outstar Joe Biden, she will also be critical. She'll have a big role. She is the Democratic establishment's best hope of keeping the White House in 4 years' time. She is also the woman that is A, the first female vice president, B, the first black female vice president, C, she is a heartbeat away from the presidency when someone who's going to be an octogenarian is in office, right? She could easily, and I don't want this to happen, obviously I don't, but just looking at all the scenarios that could transpire, she could easily be the president in the next 4 years. She could easily be the president in a year. You know, we're dealing with a 78-year-old, and there are risks with that, no matter how healthy you are. Joe Biden seems like a pretty healthy guy. He'll probably be fine. But, although he's not Bernie Sanders levels of healthy, and he's definitely experienced some level of cognitive decline. But physically he seems fine. The mind is more where I'm concerned. But, you know, Kamala Harris is going to be key. She's going to shape a lot of things. And if the administration goes well, she will be the Democratic standard bearer in 2024. Almost guaranteed. Unless they cock up everything, she will be. This administration is, we know this, going to go bigger than Obama. We don't know how much bigger, but we know, because the Overton window has shifted, we're going to have a president whose personal views are more conservative than the personal views of Barack Obama, but whose policies are more progressive than the policies of Barack Obama. How much? I don't know. I tend to listen to the skeptics on this. I lean more with the skeptics than the optimists. You have to be skeptical when you're dealing with the duplicitous, two-faced monster that is the liberal democratic establishment in the US. This administration will be a one-term administration. Biden will not stand again, almost certainly will not stand again, but it is going to be a jam-packed, busy term. It's not going to be business as usual. It is so much, it would be impossible to do business as usual. The administration must match up to the huge challenges people face. It must tackle the climate crisis. It must tackle the racial justice crisis. It must tackle the global pandemic. And it must tackle the economic settlement that has left too many people out for far too long. These are all things it says it wants to do, but the actual policies are somewhat lacking. Quite a lot lacking. They either face up to these huge challenges sufficiently, represent working people and deliver tangible benefits to their constituents, or they collapse in 2024, and someone far worse than Trump comes along. Speaking of Trump, multiculturalism is not who America is, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said on his last full day at the State Department, a curious message from a diplomat whose own ancestors were immigrants from Italy, and one that ran counter to the United States' long-held pride in being a melting pot of cultures. So this is what he said. And he's presided over a State Department where diplomats of colour have been ignored, passed over, or otherwise pressured to resign. He also decried what he described as a sop to political correctness that he said points in one direction: authoritarianism. Wokeism, multiculturalism, all the isms. They're not who America is. They distort our glorious founding and what this country is all about. Our enemies stoke these divisions because they know they make us weaker. Well, where do we start with that? This shows the true nature of the outgoing administration. It is an administration that's capitulated to and offered breathing space to white supremacists. And someone decrying multiculturalism is not what America's about. I mean, he's sort of right. The country was founded on white supremacy. But that is doing what the Trump administration so often did, nakedly exposing the reality of what elites in America really think. They really think stuff like that. Including in liberal circles. They really think stuff like that. Another quick-fire one. President Trump on Monday ordered an end to the ban on travellers from Europe and Brazil that had been aimed at stopping the spread of the coronavirus to the United States, a move quickly rejected by aides of President-elect Joe Biden, who said that Mr. Biden will maintain the ban when he takes office on Monday. So it's a proclamation issued late last night. Trump said that the travel restrictions, which apply to non-citizens trying to come to the United States after spending time in those areas, would no longer be needed come January the 26th. Bizarre. It appears to be Trump. It's a parting destructive act, right? It's him trying to cause more chaos. It's ridiculous. It's spiteful. It's childish. One of the reasons he's unlikely to ever be elected president again, which is, of course, welcome. Watch out for more bizarre acts like this between now and the inauguration, which will be at 4:30 tomorrow, and we will, of course, give you all the coverage later in the day. I'm not entirely sure what time the coverage will be. It may be, as per usual, at 7 p.m. If not, it will be later, but look out, and it will pop up. You know, you'll get your notifications. So subscribe with notifications on to this channel to find out when our special coverage of the inauguration kicks in. And make sure you watch the inauguration on whatever channel you choose at 4:30 p.m. UK time tomorrow. It will be very interesting. Okay, back over to Britain. Let's see what the CBI thinks. So the UK's leading employers' organisation has warned Rishi Sunak that businesses running short of cash and resilience cannot afford to wait 6 weeks for the budget to secure more financial help from the government. Tony Danker, the Director General of the CBI, called on the Chancellor to extend the furlough scheme, defer VAT payments, and resist the temptation to raise business taxes as a way of plugging the UK's record peacetime budget deficit. So, looking more in depth at this, asked to comment on reports that Sunak was planning to announce an increase in corporation tax, currently levied at a main rate of 19% in the budget, Danker said, "It would be wrong to raise business taxes when we don't have a recovery. It's simple as that. The Chancellor should be hugely cautious. The government can't have enough certainty about the next 6 months to make a business tax increase in the next year." Complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. I understand not hitting working people with a tax raise in the middle of a pandemic, obviously. But business taxes, we have the lowest business tax rate in Europe, or one of. Of course we can afford to raise it. Will Rishi Sunak do it? I doubt it. But of course, that's what we should be doing. Of course that's what we should be looking at. So many of these firms have basically creamed the crop of economic largesse during this crisis when so many people are suffering. Of course, so many of the elite haven't even been hit by this. So, no-brainer that. If Rishi Sunak does that, he is actually putting pragmatism before ideology. I just don't have that much faith in his ability to put pragmatism before ideology. It's like when he briefed a wealth tax. That never happened. The Tory donors get on the phone and they just stop doing it. So the head of the CBI wants a $6 billion extension of the furlough scheme, which subsidises the wages of temporarily laid off workers beyond its planned end in April to the end of June, and further targeted support to protect jobs subsequently. Lengthening repayment periods for existing VAT deferrals until June the 21st at the earliest, and allowing firms to defer VAT bills for the first quarter of 2021 for 12 months. And of course, an extension of the business rates holiday for at least another 3 months to those UK firms forced to close under current restrictions, and expanding relief to their supply chains. So, looking at this, Sunak and the Treasury, while initially they went big, and they did what needed to be done, and they were pragmatic, they have now presided over an elite first pandemic, right? A certain subsection of the population, maybe a third, been completely insulated from all this. They've saved during this, and other companies have made huge profits and exploited workers during this. That has been enabled by the approach Rishi Sunak has taken, which has been an elite first, a boss's first approach to economic support, even when it's big sums of money at the Treasury, highlighting how important it is, not just how much is spent, but where the spending goes. We're heading for an elite first economic recovery, where special interests sop up lots of money, the little guy gets socked, and where we manage to recover from the crisis, but and enough of the Tories' base are satisfied and insulated that they still vote Tory and secure them a majority in 4 years' time, 3 years' time. But at the same time, they are able, essentially, to leave, a third, half of people completely socked by all this. The most vulnerable completely socked. Working people completely socked. But no one cares, because no matter what they vote, it won't get the Tories out of office. That's what they're going to do. How do we stop it? Well, we organise. Join a trade union. Organise in your workplace. All these things are crucial. No one is standing up and fighting to address the challenges we face in this country. Labour are letting the Tories trample over so many things we hold dear. No one is actually matching up to the scale of the challenges we face, being honest about their scale, or being honest about the stark consequences of what we do next, or indeed levelling with the public about the level of ambition required to even get to being a functional, normal country. Basically. John says, tax the wealthy. Corporation tax increases won't raise much due to loss of profits, apart from the Tory supporters with windfall profits, PPE, etc. I agree with that to an extent. Corporation tax increases are certainly something that should be as part of a mix, but it's assets, it's wealth. These are the sort of things that really need to be dug into. And this is what can fuel the recovery, right? This is how we can start closing that deficit, which is apparently what Tories are so excited to do. Of course they're not. Of course they don't care about it. They just use it as a stick to shrink the state. But, if they genuinely cared about things like that, they'd keep investing while raising taxes on the wealthy. That is the sensible approach to take. Over to the situation with Corbyn, and lawyers for Jeremy Corbyn have accused the Labour leader Keir Starmer of making inflammatory and disingenuous attacks on his predecessor following a row over the state of the party's handling of anti-Semitism. At a High Court hearing on Monday, Corbyn's lawyers said documents would help prove there was a deal with Starmer's office to readmit him to the party, and Corbyn's suspension went behind an agreement to reinstate him to Labour at all levels. So Corbyn's barrister, Christopher Jacobs, told the hearing the disclosure will enable my client to plead that there was procedural unfairness and breach of a duty to act in good faith. He said Corbyn's treatment by the party had been grossly unfair. Corbyn did, of course, issue a clarifying statement saying it was not his intention to tolerate anti-Semitism or belittle concerns about it, and he did, of course, apologise for instances of anti-Semitism and Jewish members hurt by the failure of the antiquated processes at the time as well, although that, of course, wasn't reported. So, Corbyn's doing what he must. Keir Starmer deserves it. He's brought this upon himself. He's ripping apart the Labour Party. The left was always willing to work with Starmer, but a factional attack on one of us is a factional attack on all of us, and we will oppose this. Final story of the day, final bit of the day, and the Scottish Parliament has rejected a controversial bill from Westminster that potentially allows undercover agents to commit crimes after Labour MSPs again ignored Keir Starmer's policies. Labour MSPs in Scotland voted alongside the Scottish National Party, the Scottish Greens and the Lib Dems in a principled vote to refuse legislative consent by Holyrood for the so-called Spy Cops Bill after a short debate this afternoon. Excellent. Brilliant. So Scottish politics, in many ways, is far superior to our politics. It has its failings, but seeing things like this make me think it is just a symbolic act. But you know, it's a middle finger to Westminster. It's a middle finger to the authoritarianism of the Spy Cops Bill. Independence would be a breach from the status quo. It would be a break from the elite that have plundered Britain for far too long, and for that reason, I would come down on the side. You know. I won't. It's Scottish people's right to self-determination, but I would probably be in favour. If I was Scottish, I'd probably be voting for independence and attempting to create a socialist paradigm once we left, right? That's what I would be looking at it as. We'll see what happens. That's it from me. Subscribe, notifications on. We will be back tomorrow, either at the same time as usual or a little bit later with all the latest. With our special coverage, our MesmePolitics special coverage of the Joe Biden inauguration and new administration. Lots to talk about. PMQs at midday tomorrow, inauguration at 4:30 tomorrow. I'll see you very soon.